Hello, this video is going to go over lesson 12, inventory and UI. So all that stuff. We did picking up weapons using BP triggerable. We did switching between weapons using the mouse wheel and adding other inputs like 1, 2, and 3 to switch between weapons. And then we're going to do a bunch of UI stuff like making a health bar, making a crosshair, making it so that we can see the weapon we're holding in the bottom right corner, and stuff like that. I think a pause screen and a game over screen too. So that is quite a lot. Let's go ahead and get into it. If you're coming into this video from a specific point of lesson 12 that you already did, I will add chapters in the description of this video so you can skip around to whatever point that you're on. Another quick bonus thing that I had to do, so I want to show it, is let's say you're working on your project and your project's on GitHub and you want to revert to a previous version, which I have to do because I want to show from the top of this lesson. You can go to your repository in GitHub desktop, switch to the history tab, find the change that you want to change. If you've been pushing them and naming them, it might be hard to find the change if your names don't make any sense. But I know weapon switching is what we did at the start of this lesson. You can right click it and then revert changes in commits. And you just make sure your project is closed before you do that, or else you'll get errors. And then you'll probably see like a undo button down here. Once you click that, you will see all those changes show up in the Changes tab. You can make sure they're all checked and then right click at the top. It'll say like 20 changed files or whatever. And then discard all those changes. And then all those changes will disappear. I'm pretty sure you can do that with your project open too. So that's what I just had to do to get back to the version of the project that's just fresh from no lesson 12 in it. So now I can start from lesson 12, and the first thing we're doing is making it so that we can change the visual of the pickup item depending on what weapon we're picking up. So we're going to go to weapon base from our weapon blueprints folder, and we're going to use the construction script, which is just like the awake function in C#, or it's just everything that happens before the game actually starts. So this is where you do like a bunch of like startup stuff and setup rather. So you can, it's always going to be in the functions panel of your blueprint. You just double click it from there, you get this purple thing. And like I said, we want to set the static mesh. So I can just pull out, set static mesh. And you want to make sure that this parentheses mesh is the same name as your mesh in the components panel. You could also just drag it out from there, press Control, drop it down there, and then get set static mesh from that. Link up these white connection nodes. And then the new mesh is going to be a new variable that we create called visual. So you want to make this as a visual because it's going to be something that we set on the children of our weapon base. So BP gun, BP grenade launcher, sword, whatever weapons you have are going to have a different variable. And because our parent class has that variable, all of our children are going to have it as well. So variables plus button, call it visual. In the Boolean, I set it to type static mesh. Make sure it's an object reference, so I just clicked it, and then we can drag that in, hold Control, drop it in, and set that to the new mesh parameter there. That's it. Compile and save that blueprint. Now that's going to be called every time for all of our weapons before they load up. So if I go to my weapons folder again and open one of my weapons, say BP gun for example, because that's being called, there's no mesh anymore. There's no gun mesh. Because we didn't set anything for that variable. So if I go to the class defaults, if you don't see your defaults, you can just click this button in the toolbar. We see that new variable that we just added in the parent class. It's set to none, so we're going to change that to SM_gun. And then I will quickly do that for my grenade launcher. SM grenade launcher. And my pipe, BP pipe, SM pipe. Are set and compiled and saved. Let's make the actual pickup blueprint. So that's going to be, as you could probably guess, a child of our BP triggerable, because this is the parent of everything that we interact with via collision. I'm going to right click it, create child blueprint, BP pickup item. Control Shift S, and then double click to open up that blueprint. And the first thing we want to do is make a variable that's going to set what the item is going to be. So let's actually give it a static mesh to pass to. And let's make it spin. So let's add another component, rotating movement. So as you know, I'm just going to the components panel, hitting add, added a static mesh and a rotating movement component. So that's going to now rotate slowly. Here you can change the rotation rate. 180 should be fine for us. I'm going to add that variable, name it weapon class, and it's going to be of type weapon base because that's what we're going to be picking up as a weapon. For once, or for, rarely, it's going to be a class reference, not an object reference, because we don't want to just pick up a generic weapon. We want to pick up a specific weapon. So now we're going to go back to the construction script, except this time it's the construction script of the pickup item. So again, just went to the functions panel, and we're going to do the same kind of thing. In the setup, we want to set up the static mesh. I dragged it in from the components panel. Make sure that this static mesh is this static mesh. Again, we're going to drag out and set set. Connect it in from there, and this time we want to get the mesh from this weapon class. So by the way, we should make this weapon class public so that we can set it in the editor. So we can just click this little eyeball next to the variable, or you can click this instance editable checkbox. It's doing the same thing. Drag out from the weapon class, get class defaults. So that's doing exactly what it's saying that it's doing. Remember, earlier in this video, I showed you the class defaults button. All this stuff, it's getting all of this stuff. It's getting everything there. And then what do we want from the class defaults? We want the visual. All right, now let's do the bulk of the programming for picking up weapons, and we're going to do that on our BP character base because that's where we're handling most of our weapon stuff. So that should be in the player assets folder, BP character base, blueprint. Let's open that up. Make sure that we're in the event graph tab. It's important. And then first we're going to add a new variable. So variables plus button. This one's going to be called weapons. This variable is going to hold all the different weapons that we can hold. Make sure that it's of type BP weapon base in that drop down. And then this time it's going to be an object reference. So it's blue. Then we want to make it an array, not a single item. Because our weapons, we have multiple weapons. So we're going to turn it into an array, which is a list of items. So we could do that by making sure it's selected, going to the details panel, and then next to the variable type at the end, hit that drop down, switch it from single to array. 3x3 boxes. First thing that we can do is go to the acquire new weapon function that we have here, go all the way to the end, and we're going to drag our weapons variable somewhere over there, get it, so control and drop it, drag out and make an add unique node in the array section, and just add that to the very end. And then for the bottom node, we want to connect it to the spawn actor node. This is what's spawning our weapon, right? So we could just drag out, if you have this reroute node. If you don't have one, I recommend double clicking the line and making one, then dragging it from that reroute node into the bottom input pin of the add unique node. We're just making sure that if we run into this, if we're calling this acquire new weapon stuff, then it's only going to add the weapon if we don't have it already. We don't want to be holding a bunch of grenade launchers. If we pick up more than one, hold one at a time. All right, next, let's make the functionality for testing if we still have the weapon, which is going to be in a function. So still in our BP character base blueprint, I go to the functions panel, hit the plus button, and name it has weapon type. So making sure it made this little new graph with this purple node. It's not a custom event or anything. It's not red, it's purple. And now we're going to basically check if the weapon that we pick up is equal to any of the weapons in our weapons array. So as you might have guessed, the first thing we're going to do is pull out our weapon array. We're going to get a reference to this. By the way, you could also copy and paste this from the class docs theoretically. I don't know. In class, I remember it was giving us some issues, so I'm just going to do it out manually. So let's cycle through each index in this array. So I'm going to pull out from weapons and create a for each loop, which, as we talked about, it's like a little spinny wheel spinning through all the items in the array. Like if you're gambling, whatever that gambling game is called. I don't gamble very often, so I don't know what it is. And then we're going to connect it up, and then slots is the game, and then completed. We're going to make a return node. So I just distracted myself. It was for no reason. And then we need to add some output parameters to this. So in a function, the output parameters are on the return node, and then on the initial node are the input parameters. So by the way, I forgot, on the initial node, we need to create an input parameter. So in the details panel, the input section, plus button, which has happened, plus button, weapon class. So it's going to be of type weapon base. Make sure you set that. And then again, it's not an object reference, it's a class reference. So it's purple. And then in the return node, we want an input parameter. We want two input parameters. One is going to be a bool, which is going to be our result. It's not letting me name it result. I think it's because there's leftover cache. So I'm just going to name it result pin. It doesn't really matter what the name is. It's just, as long as it's just going to be that return value that matters. And then the second output parameter is called weapon. No, existing weapon. Of type BP weapon based object reference. So it's blue. So anything we pull out of this blue array element from the for each loop is being called on every item in the array. So here, well, first let's, thought I called this one weapon class. I guess that has cache left over as well. So I can't call it I'll call it weapon class reference to that. And then ultimately this is going to be an equals node. So just type equals. It's just the operator node, the regular one. I'm going to tidy it up. I'm going to double click on the line to create a reroute node. It's a little bit hard to see in purple. I'm actually going to connect this to the bottom so it's a little cleaner. Then alt click on the top pin to get rid of it. Then we want to check if each item in this array is equal to this. So let's drag out and get a class reference because we're not going to be able to drag an object into a class. So get objects class, or get class, and then drag that into there. So I was checking that. Then hit B and click to create a branch node. And then let's connect the white execution pins. So if it's true, if that array element is equal to this weapon class ref, then it will return. Let's create another return node. It will return true. And then we can pull out from this array element and set it to that existing weapon. Add some reroute nodes. And then, of course, I forgot, make sure you connect these Boolean pins so it actually knows what it's checking. So all this function is doing is just checking whether we have the weapon or not. So it'll make a lot more sense once we get to the next functionality, which is making the function for when we actually overlap with a weapon. We'll be able to pass this in at the very beginning to check whether we have it or not. So you'll see when we call has weapon type, we'll be able to pass a reference to whatever weapon that we're overlapping with into here. And then it's going to check if that equals this element in the array that it's cycling through, whatever one that may be. If it's true, then it's just going to return true. If it's false, then it returns false. And then we'll decide, well, what do we want to do with that information? What we're going to do next is say if we have it already, then we do nothing. And if we don't have it, then we can go ahead and add it to our array. So let's go ahead and do that in the event graph. So I just hit the event graph tab, and now we're going to make another function called weapon pickup overlapped. So we're going to do that the same way as before. Functions plus weapon pickup overlapped. Weapon pickup overlapped. And like I said, well, first let's make the input parameter plus, call a weapon class of type class, not object reference. And like I said, the first thing we're going to do is check has weapon type. So all that stuff that we just did. Plug the class into the this input parameter. Click B to create a branch node. Let's connect those. The result of this, so whether it's true or false, whether or not we have a weapon or not. If it's true, for now, let's just make a print string that says, hello, I have it already. Spelled it wrong, that's okay. If it's false, then we can call acquire new weapon, which we did before. We did that last semester, all that acquire new weapon stuff. Then I'm going to pull out and return. Add a return node at the very end. Going to give it a little boolean. So output, added another output. Output parameter. Bool. True or false. I'm also going to, we want to know which weapon to acquire. And we want to acquire the weapon that we overlap with. Let's plug that in there. I'm going to add a little reroute node. All right, compile and save that. And then let's go to back to BP pickup item. So important, we're switching blueprints. And we want to call all that stuff when we overlap with this. So we're going to override the overlapped events. So functions override overlapped. So what it's doing on the BP triggerable parent, we're going to do something different. First, we're going to cast a BP character base so we can have access to all that stuff that we just did. Going to connect the other actor with the object. Going to drag out from BP character base and get that function that we just made, weapon pickup overlapped. Automatically connects itself. The weapon class, which is stored on this already, so we can grab that from the variables, control drop it in, connect that to the weapon class. So this will be the weapon that we pick up. So this input parameter is equal to this that we just made from here. So we can see how we're creating these arguments. That's how they're being passed back and forth. Hit B to create a branch node, connect it, the bool, the white execution pins. Then at the end, we want to destroy the actor. Destroy the pickup item. That's it, compile. Now I'm going to switch to my BP weapon base. Important, remember to switch switch blueprints. And we want to make a function for replenishing ammo. So shucks, I already have it, so I'm going to delete it. And this is, of course, for when you pick up a weapon. Even if you already have it, you want to replenish your ammo for that. So let's hit the override button this time on the functions panel. Oh, I'm sorry, no, first we have to make it, of course. So hit the plus button and then replenish ammo. You can name it that. It's going to do something different depending on whether it's a ranged weapon or a melee weapon. So in the base, we're just going to have a return node. It's not doing anything. And the return node needs nothing but a result boolean output. Output. Okay, now let's go open our ranged weapon so we can add that different functionality. Weapon blueprints, BP, ranged weapon. Guessing that I already have it. So I'm going to delete that. And now we want to overwrite it. Remember, we're in the ranged weapon blueprints. Replenish ammo. Just click the override drop down to do that. Make sure it's purple, like this. Right now it's not doing anything. So let's make it do the right stuff. Again, this is in the documentation as well, right here in this section. You know what, let's try. I don't want this video to be like 3 hours long. So let's go ahead and try to copy and paste it. It's never going to repaste this beginning node, so you can just copy and paste everything. Not bad. Doesn't look bad so far. Looks like every node actually went through. Just gonna delete this return node. Let's get rid of this parent one. Let's compile. Oh wow, no errors. That's surprising. So let me actually like read through this though. So when this is being called, it's going to set the ammo in the inventory to getting a reference to ourself, return value. So we're getting a reference to our class, and then it's getting the class default. So we remember this node. So it's getting all of this stuff, right? These class default settings. And then it's adding ammo and clip to our ammo in inventory. So it's adding the base default, whatever we set in those default settings, to our current ammo in our inventory. So it's basically just resetting us to max. Then auto reload if we're empty, updating the UI with our new ammo. All right, let's go test it out now. The last thing you need to do is go back to BP pickup item in the components panel, select the static mesh, the details panel, search for a collision, and set it. It should be like block all dynamic or something. Set it to no collision in the collision presets drop down. File and save that. And then in the triggerables folder, drag out the pickup item. I'm going to Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V. And remember, we made that weapon class variable default. Public. Now we can see it here because of that. So change one to the pipe, change one to the gun, and change one to the grenade launcher. And then let's test and see if we can pick it out. I'm already holding the gun. I walk over the grenade launcher to pick that one up. Walk over the pipe to pick that one up. I already have a gun. So we can pick them up. That's awesome. Let's do switching between them. All right, now let's try to move into switching between the weapons. So trying to go a little bit quicker here. BP character base, where we're handling most of this weapon switching and picking and acquiring. I do remember in class that this was definitely like not working very well when we tried to copy and paste it, but I don't care. I'm gonna try again. So this is what is this? Switch to next weapon custom event. So that is doing what it's sounding like. And yeah, this is what happened. All of the variables were not going. Oh, looks like, oh no, it's not working. So find, it's because I need to connect this. So one thing you could do is just remake it on top of each other. Then it should connect. It's still not connecting. Pull out new weapons and then current active weapon. Let's pull that, the find. This is a find. We need to find a specific item. Then a plus node. So at this point, I might as well just make it from scratch. Let's see if it'll even. Oh, we already have that. We already have this. We already have that. All we need is the modulo, which is a percent sign basically. And this connects to the percent sign. I'm just gonna remake them from scratch, and then the get node has to come out of a weapons variable. Get a copy. So you want to get a copy one. And hopefully that plugs into the next weapon. It does. Sweet. Delete all that. That was not the most effective way to do that, but it's done. So what this is doing is checking if our current active weapon. So all this is doing is exactly what it sounds like it's doing. The current weapon we're holding, is it valid? Does it exist? If so, then we switch the next active weapon to the next active weapon in our array, which is figuring that out by finding the current active weapon. So whatever we have stored here, it's finding that in our array. It's adding one. Okay, so I forgot to add one to that. So make sure you switch that from 0 to 1 because we're going to go to the next one. And then the percent sign, the modulo. Be careful. I mistake that for a divide sign often. Is getting the length of it, so the max. So how many items are in the array. It's making sure that if we're on the last item, it circles back to the first one. And then it's getting that one from our overall weapons array, and it's setting that to the next active weapon. So copy and pasting, it's going to get a little messy. Essentially, you just remake it. If you can't find the node, just pause the video that I did, or just draw out from where you think it makes sense. And remember, you have to redrag your variables from your variable panel, then recreate the nodes from those new variables. I'm going to compile that. And let's look at the next method that we're going to make. Spoiler alert, it's going to be switched to previous weapon, because we want to be able to go back and forth. Should I copy and paste it again? No, we're not going to do that. So let's make that from scratch. So add custom event, switch to previous weapon, just because I think it's going to be easier to follow along if I just do it from scratch. But we're going to do the same thing, really. Get control drop our current active weapon variable. Check is valid. Always get the question. Pretty much for what we're doing, always get the question mark is valid node. Connect it up. Hit B kind of over here to create a branch node. B and click. Condition of this branch. Let's pull out the weapons variable array, the weapons array variable. Pull out the current active weapon one, get it. We're getting it, not setting it. Pull out and find. We want to find an item in the array, so I should have pulled out from the array node. Find item. This item is what we want to find. What are we going to do with that? We're going to subtract. Just hit the subtract button, and once again, we're going to subtract 1 instead of 0. We're going to see if that's less than 0. So if it's not the very first one, then this is going to return true. Otherwise, it's going to return false. So what are we doing with that? We are going to ultimately switch active weapon 2. Let's pull out the weapons array once again and get a copy of that. From here, we're going to pull out and get a copy. And then plug that get into the next active weapon. And then out of the array, we want to get the last index node and then plug that into the integer pin. Make it look a little bit tidier. Out of the false one, we're going to switch active weapon 2 again. Switch active weapon 2. This one is going to get... I'm just going to copy and paste the weapons array in the get node. This time it's going to get the subtract value. So let me make that look a little bit prettier. So from that subtract node that we made earlier, then that get is going to plug into the next active weapon as well. So that looks like that. I think there's one more longer blueprint that we need to make. Let me check that really quickly. Oh no, that's it. We're done. So we need to create the input controls for that. So as you guys know, we go to the, whenever we want to change the inputs, we go to our mapping context, our input mapping context. But before we can add those mapping contexts here, oh shoot, I already have them. That's okay. We can make this video a little bit quicker. Go to the actions folder. You can duplicate one of these or right click input, new input action. Make one that's called IA previous weapon and one that's called IA next weapon. So I would duplicate like the reload or the shoot or something. And then go to the mapping context and then open up the mappings drop down. Hit this plus button. And then set the drop down to the input action that we just made. One for next weapon, one for previous weapon. Open that up. And then just set the input to mouse wheel up and mouse wheel down. That's all I did. And now we can actually, so all of our inputs are on BP character FPS. This is where we're gonna tell it to do stuff depending on that. So right click, make sure you're in the event graph, and then IA underscore next weapon. We want to call switch to next weapon, which we have access to because this is a child of the parent that we made this custom event on. And then same thing for previous weapon. We want to switch to the previous weapon. So make sure the next one is going to the next one and the previous one is referencing the previous weapon function. All right, now with that done, we can compile and save that and then go press play. We try to switch weapons with the gun. We don't have any weapons yet, just switches to the gun. Pick up a couple weapons. Go up and down, switches between my gun and the grenade launcher. If I scroll the other way, it goes the other way. Good, that's working. So now let's make it, because it's a quick thing to do, so you can do it with shortcuts as well. So I go to BP weapon base. And looks like I already have this variable, but I just clicked plus, named the variable shortcut. In the type, I search for key. So it's the one that just says key, and it's a dark blue color. So it's of type key. You keep the default value to none. Go to my weapons. So this is from the weapons folder. Open up my pipe blueprint, for example. I'll see in the class defaults. Yep, I already have that done. You would just set this shortcut to the 1 key. Go to BP gun, set it to the 2 key. You would just search for it. Keyboard section 2. BP grenade launcher, I'm going to assume that I already have that on the 3 key. After we do that, we just have a small little bit of programming to do on BP character base. Right here, I'm going to go to my event graph and shucks. Let's see if we can. This is longer than I thought it was. Copy and paste this custom event here. Actually, it's down here. Shortcut weapon switch. Let's see what happens if I copy and paste that. I forgot if this one is going to work well or not. But I just pasted that in the event graph tab. Make sure it's that one. And the weapons. Yeah, I remember the weapons array. You have to remake that. So I'm just going to remake that. For each loop with break, make sure it's the one with a break. And then from there, we're going to pull out and get a copy of our shortcut. So remember, the for each loop is spinning through all the items in the array, like spinning, and then target. This is going to be called on every item in that array. So for every item, we want to get a reference to the shortcut. And for the shortcut, equals, because we're going to see, I guess, if that equals, we're going to call this from any key, spoiler. So we're going to see if that key equals the key that's on our weapon shortcut. And if it's true, we're going to switch to that weapon. So I know this is a convoluted mess right now. But I'm going to go ahead and attach the first node to the new for each loop node that we made. Then get rid of all this craziness. Goodbye, goodbye. Oops. And then this equal node. Well, we can connect the branch node with the for each loop, the equals to the condition input pin. Then I'm just going to remake this just for good measure. Switch active weapon 2. And then we can switch it to the weapon. Where are we getting that weapon reference? Actually, let's see. Shortcut equals shortcut key. Also goes into, we already did that. Let me just make that neater. Oh my god, you can barely see the blue. Yes, we're just switching it to the active weapon in the array, whatever we're on. That's it. Compile and save that. Let me make sure I'm not missing any steps. No, we just need to do the input next. So in BP character FPS, any key, we're going to check if that key is actually, what was the name of what we just made? Shortcut weapon switch. shortcut. And plug the key into the key input parameter. Now please tell me that's working. Let's connect the weapons first. Or collect the weapons. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Awesome. Alright, now with that done, it looks like we're going to update the can operate weapon. Actually, first it looks like it wants us to update this to a variable, which I think is wise. Promote the variable. Montage split. I'm going to call the new variable that we made weapon switch anim. If we decide to switch that, we can just switch the variable. It'll update that the entire project. That's how you make it scalable. Alright, looks like we're going to update the can operate weapon function. For some reason, I do not have that function at all. So I don't know if that's just me or if nobody in the class has that. But I think we made that before, or we were supposed to. Either way, we're going to just make it now. If you don't have it, we're just going to make it together anyways. In the documentation, this is what it looks like. We can copy and paste it. Of course, we have to make that function first. So in the function, a BP character base, I'm adding another one, can operate weapon. And I'm just going to, instead of updating it, just paste the whole thing in and connect that to that. Make sure that looks right. It's getting the current montage. If it does not equal the, let's look at it here. Does not equal the variable that we made. Okay, so make sure that you named the variable the exact same as this one. If you didn't, then just replace it with the one that you made for the weapon switch animation. I'm going to delete this variable, this health component variable, drag the one in that we already have, control drop that in, drag out from that, create a current health, then plug that into the bottom. Oh no, here we're just trying to make sure our health doesn't equal 0. So I don't think it matters if it's the bottom or the top one. I'm going to plug it into the top one. And then that's it. And because we're just checking to see if our health equals 0 before we can operate the weapon. Otherwise, we'll keep attacking, or the enemy will keep attacking, and the attack animation will interrupt the death animation, and they will never die. They'll just keep attacking. But if their health equals 0, then this will return this result. If the montage is playing, if the montage is not playing and the health doesn't equal 0, then this will return as true. So if it returns true, that means they can't operate the weapon. All right, that's what's going on there. Now let's go to what's next. Reset weapon state. Oh, first, because we never actually called this, or at least I didn't. You guys might have this already done. But if you're like me and you didn't have it done, in the event graph of BP character base, we actually have to make sure we call can operate weapon. And this is just good so you know what is generally going on in your code. I'm going to give a little bit more space. Hit B, create a branch node. And just before we attack and before we reload, we're just checking if we can actually operate the weapon. All right, moving on. Next, let's switch to BP weapon base and make sure we go to the event graph, BP weapon base event graph, find a space, create a new custom event, and call it activated. And this is going to switch our weapon states. This is going to set, what's it doing? Set weapon state. This is our enumeration, so a list of data to idle. So we're going to call this, let's compile and save that. Go back to BP character base, find the switch active weapon to custom event, go to the end. Going to call this at the end on the completed of the play montage node, drag out from on completed. Rather get our current active weapon first and drag out from current active weapon so that we can actually find the node that we're looking for, and then call this activated from on completed. Every time we switch weapons, we are switching back to our idle state. So because we made this activated in our BP weapon base, we can call it from our BP ranged weapon. So let's open that. BP ranged weapon, or rather we can override it. So let's go to the event graph of the BP ranged weapon and override from that tab in the functions panel, the activated at the very top. Let's get a call to the parent activated. So we do that first. Right click it. Add call to parent function is what I clicked. Connect it up. Call auto reload if clip is empty, so that we reload when we switch weapons too, if we need to. So one more little quality of life thing that we need to do is for the BP gun and also open the BP grenade launcher. If we're switching weapons in between reloading, we have notifies in our reload process that attach clips or whatever to our hands. We want to make sure that we clean those up and destroy those. Let's start with the BP gun. Event graph. It doesn't really matter, but override weapon in inventory. So at the very bottom, let's get another call to our parent function. Connect that. Drag out and create is valid node. We're going to check if this clip exists. So clip in hand, let's control drop that in to get a reference to it. Plug that into the is valid node. Then destroy it. And connect it up again like that. Then we're going to do the exact same thing for the BP grenade launcher. Override weapon and inventory. Call to parent function. Connect it. Is valid node. The is valid node with the question mark. Grenade in hand. Drag that in and destroy. That's it. Compile and save. All right, that's it for the hard part, in my opinion. Now we're moving on to the second half, which is just the UI stuff. So adding the weapons, the crosshair, the health bar, stuff like that, which is the exciting part, in my opinion, because I think that's when a game really starts to look like a game, is when the user interface elements are on it. And yeah, we're going to be doing a bunch. So after this lesson, you should feel fairly confident. We will definitely have an understanding of how to do pretty much anything you need to do, as long as it's simple. But even if you want to do like something more advanced, you should feel like you should have a solid understanding, so it's not so overwhelming. But anyways, we have worked on UI before with the widget blueprint for the start menu. Let's go to the widget blueprint folder and create a new widget blueprint. So right click user interface widget blueprint of type user widget WB underscore master. This is gonna hold, this is just like the main HUD, like the main heads up display. Double click it, it's gonna hold everything. It's gonna go on this. By the way, if you have a bunch of tabs when you open them and they're opening in new windows, I forgot to say this earlier in the semester, but you go to editor preferences and then just right here, asset editor open location, switch it from default to main window, because that also causes bugs, and it's also just bad to work with a bunch of separate windows. They should all be shuffled with each other. Whenever I open a window, it just automatically shovels with everything else. So in the palette panel, I think it used to automatically add a canvas, because you're pretty much always going to use a canvas. So drag a canvas onto WB master so that it is a child. And a UI switch. This is getting into the stuff that I made like 6 months ago or so. So don't remember everything that I did. UI switcher is what I want right now. For some reason I can't talk in search. Where is it? Oh, a widget switcher. And that's a child of the canvas panel. Make sure that it's not like next to it or anything. It's a child. I'm going to call this widget switcher UI switch. UI underscore switch. Then which is just going to switch between two different canvases. So we have one for playing, the normal HUD, and one for when we're in pause. We gotta add another canvas as a child of the UI switch, and then another canvas as a child of the UI switch. So the two canvases, they have to be on the same level. So pause if you have to. Make sure everything is parented in the same order as this, the same way as this, because that's important. I'm gonna name the top one playing, so you can click and press F2 or double click it. Bottom one, pause. Now I want to set the anchor. So make sure that you click on the UI switch. Go to the anchors. We talked about anchors a little bit. Right now you can see our whole canvas is just this tiny little corner of the potential canvas here. So go to the anchors and hit Control Shift and hit this bottom right square to make it occupy the entire canvas. You can see the difference. If I'm not holding Control and Shift, it just updates these, Control C, but if I hit Control Shift and press it, it occupies the whole thing. So it's also updating the alignment, and you can see what it's doing here and the position to match. So it's might recommend like playing around with that just so you could see what each one is doing. And then the next step is this is just holding other widgets technically. It's we're not going to create all of our widgets on this. Let's go back to our widgets folder, right click, user interface, widget blueprint, type user widget, WPP _ weapons. It's going to be the widget, Control Shift F, save all, that hold our weapon icons and the like. All right. Oop, that was probably loud to the mic. Here, if it's on fill screen in the top right of the viewport, of the graph, change it to desired so it's going to give us the view of what we're working on. Right now, we're not working on anything. Let's add a canvas panel again. Canvas panel, drag it on there. Let's add a image. Drag it on there as a child of the canvas. F2, name it weapon icon. I'm going to set the anchor of the weapon icon to the center and check size to content. All right, now let's get some images. So I found some good placeholder ones on the Fab store that are free. They're not good, but they're free. So I'm going to go to Window, Fab, and flat icons free sample pack. And it's the first one here. And click Add to Project. And then I got them right here. I'm going to open the 128. And here's the stuff. So basically, it gives us a crosshair, a gun, inventory. We're going to pretend it's a bomb for the grenade launcher, then a wrench, which is going to be the pipe. So if you want to get better images, feel free to do that. So WBP weapons, weapon icon selected, brush opened, and I'm going to set the image to T _ money 128 or 256. All right, let's actually make this the T money 128. I think that is going to be too big because we have it set to size to content. It's actually going to use that size. Next, let's search for text in the palette window and drag two text as children of the canvas. Make sure they're both of the canvas so everything's on the same layer. One of the texts, I'm going to press F2 and name it status, so how much ammo is going to be there. The other one, I can go ahead and name it the keybind, so shortcut. So status and shortcut. And then we want to align these properly. So I'm going to anchor, I'm going to select the status text. Check size to content. Anchor it at the top. I'm going to press Control Shift and anchor it at the top. So it's just going to show the ammo at the top. Actually, let me hide this shortcut text really quickly. So just press this little eyeball next to this shortcut text. maybe make the size of the font. So in the appearance panel, open up the font, make the size like 10, 15, 20. I'll make it 20, whatever looks good to you. I'm going to change the text to 10 out of 10 just as the placeholder, and that looks fine to me. So we can click on the unhide the shortcut text block. This one I'm going to position, anchor, and align at the bottom. So Control, Shift, click the bottom middle. It's a little big. Maybe make that one 25. And then set the default text to 1 or 2, for example. And I'm going to align justification. I'm going to set it to the middle. That looks pretty good. And if you want, you can open the outline settings and give it some outline. So yeah, maybe like 1.5, maybe for the ammo as well. Give it some outline. All right, so with that, I realized I didn't name my widget blueprint. I named it WB instead of WBP. It doesn't matter, but just so people know, I made that change. With that, oh, this is the start menu. On the master again, we're gonna add it from the palette window, a tile view as a child of the UI switch. Or rather, we only want the weapons to be showing on the playing menu. So everything that's going to be showing in the playing UI is a child of the playing canvas. Pause menu, child of the pause canvas. Here, I'm going to change the name to weapon list. And then go to the anchors, open up the anchors drop down, Control Shift, align, position, and anchor it to the bottom right. If you compile it, we get the error that we don't have the entry yet. So luckily we made the WBP already. Now we just have to add the interface that's going to allow us to implement that as an entry. So from the WBP master, I go to the graph, top right corner, and we're going to implement the interface that's going to give us a list of things that we can do. So click on the class settings button and then scroll down. That changed the details panels when we did that. Implemented interfaces, add, scroll, or just search for user object list entry. And then if you open up the drop down, you can see it got added. All right, next, let's go back to the designer. Make sure the weapons list is selected. Select size to content. That is doing exactly what it says it's doing. It's making the size match the content. In our case, it's going to be the entries that we just made, the WBP weapons. Let's go make the alignment horizontal, the orientation rather. So in the list view section of the weapons list, orientation from vertical to horizontal, because horizon we want to going sideways. What's next? Entry widget class. So that's in the list entries, change the entry widget class to the WBP. Whoa, should be WBP weapons. So if you don't see it, you might have to compile. So my Unreal editor just crashed, and I believe it is because I had the interface on the master instead of the weapons. I added it to the weapons widget blueprint. I added 2 places. I think that's why it crashed. So to avoid crashing, I recommend going back to the graph of the WBP master, going to class settings and getting rid of that interface that we added. Mine is already gone because I lost my data. And then instead adding it to the graph of the WBP weapons where it was supposed to be in the first place. So let me add that right now. User object list entry, Control Shift save so I don't crash and lose my data. Go back to designer of the WBP master. And now we should be able to see it in the what section? The list entries. No. If you don't see it, compile. Still don't see it. Compile WBP weapons after adding the interface to it. And we can see it. Hooray. Alright, I'm going to change the width to 150. I mean the height and the width to 150. And then compile it, and that looks pretty cool. Now I'm going to go to the graph, and we're going to make the functionality for adding new weapon icons. Let's see how much we can. So I'm on the entry section on page 14. At the bottom of page 14, let's see how much we can get away with just copying and pasting. So this video isn't 5 hours. Just right click, create a new custom event. We add a parameter here, new weapon add, which looks like you do it on the left. For widget blueprints, created an is valid node. It's checking if a new weapon to add exists. And then it adds the weapons list variable, which in our case is this tile view widget. Right? Didn't we name this weapons list? Yeah, weapons list. So I'm going to have to replace that with this most likely. So in fact, let me compile to, yes, okay. So this should be this. So in order to make this a variable that we can access from the graph, I'm going to check is variable. Then I'm going to go back over here, and now I can see it as a variable. So everybody has to do this. Make sure that you drag in, because we want it to point to this one specifically. You do not want to create a variable by adding just some random variable here. You have to use this one. That's pointing towards our UI. And then that becomes the new target. Let's see if that fixes anything. New weapon add. Object reference. This should probably be of type BP weapon base, as I suspected. BP weapon base. Object reference. Does that fix it? Sweet. All right. So that again, in the details panel, new weapon add is just of type BP weapon base. All right. Next, it wants us to go to BP character FPS. BP character FPS. Add a new variable called UI. Of type WBP master. Object reference. Go to BP character FPS controller. Where do we have that? Do I even have that? I don't have that. So I'm going to make that and do that off camera because everybody else should have that. All right, now I remember the controller from our class project that we made was for the sake of when we died. We want to switch characters, switch camera angles, play it, animation, and all of that. For some reason, I don't have that. So I'm just going to make a new one for the purpose of this video. So if for some reason you should have it, but if you don't have it, you can do what I'm doing. Just going to the world settings panel, player controller class, hitting this little plus button. And I'm going to save that to the player assets folder, call it BP _ FBS player controller, which is the name that we should already have. And this is what it is. There's nothing here. We're going to make another variable called WBP master, just like we did on the BP character FPS. Same. And this is going to be type WBP master, right? Oh, I guess we called it UI. It doesn't matter, but for consistency, I'm going to call it UI. All right, now back on BP character FPS. I'm right here in the documents on page, what was that, 15? At the top of 15, we're going to create this line of code. So it's creating UI, a custom event. I'm in the event graph of BP character FPS, or rather add custom event, create UI. So wherever we want to, we'll see where we're calling this from. First, we're going to get controller. We want to get the player controller, cast to BP FPS player controller. By the way, make sure that that one we made is set as the player controller class. It should automatically do it, but you might want to confirm that. It might even be worth going to clicking this little folder icon on the game mode and making sure it's your default one, which looks like it is. All right, back to business. Connect these white execution pins. From here, create WBP master widget, WB. Or just create a create widget node, actually. Then it should automatically connect. The class will be WBP master. And then you see it changes the name of the node up there. So we set the owning player who owns that widget. Now we want to set the UI of the player. Want to set our UI variable. Actually drag it out from the FPS player controller so that it has this target node. I was a little bit confused there, but so the set node is dragged out from the player controller output pin. That's all good. And then now we want to set it from here. So just drag it from there, from our variables panel. And finally, so we can see it, add to viewport, connect it, compile and save. All right, so next we can scroll up to the event begin play. Then at the end of the attach component to component node, we can call that create UI. Create UI, if we compile, save, and play, we don't see anything yet because we have nothing occupying those weapon slots yet that you see here. We don't actually have anything to show there yet. So let's go back to character FPS and override that function. Is that the next step? Yeah, we're gonna override acquire new weapon, which is on the base class of character base. Let's right click it and add a call to the parent function and connect it so that it does that first. And then this next part is kind of convoluted. The order in which you do this next part matters. So first let's get a reference to our UI so that we can call the UI add new weapon function, which is on WBP master right here. That's why we have to get that reference first. Connect it. And then we also needed access to the weapon blueprint reference that's here. So let's get a copy. So this get a copy in the array section node. You can only create it by pulling out from here. And then from here, because it's pulling out of a weapon base slot pin, we can get the weapons array from here. And then from here, we can always just get the last index array node and then plug that in here. Let's test it and see what it looks like. And right now it's just showing we have a grenade launcher. All right, now let's open BP weapon base again, and we're gonna create a function. So functions tab plus button, get weapon UI info. So the function that we're gonna use to get the info that we're gonna use to populate the weapon list UI here. So let's go to the docs and scroll down to around here, page 16, it looks like, the middle of page 16. Copy of BP weapon base blueprint right here. Looks like this. First, let's go back and make this a pure function. So I click on the starting node, click this pure button in the details panel. We're just going to make it clear that this function isn't going to be used to change anything outside of the boundaries of this function. So we're not going to change the value of any variables or anything like that. All this function is going to be used to is getting data, calculating data, stuff like that. The reason we make it pure is so that it's clear that that is this function's purpose if we're working on a team or something like that. So like you can see, it's not actually influencing anything outside. So let's Control C, copy paste all that, Control V that in here. All it's doing is getting this data that we're going to use to populate the weapon UI. I get no errors because we just made these variables and they're the exact same name as this. So if you get errors, just replace these variables with these variables that we made before. And it's just passing the image of the weapon and the crosshair. And the shortcut, so like 1, 2, or 3 that we did before. Let's go do the same thing on BP ranged weapon. If we override that method, that function that we just made, get weapon UI info. Let's pull it up. I have it right here. Wait, this one's kind of weird. If you copy and paste it and if you make it. So let's right click anywhere to make this append. And append a string is what we want, because we want to make a string appear. Oh, by the way, we're doing this on the ranged weapon. We're overriding it because on ranged weapons, we want to actually show the status. So how much ammo we have in the clip versus our inventory. So we're going to represent with a string, which is why we're making this append. So this is going to be one value. This is going to be the other one. And we want a dash in between. So I'm going to right click the middle of the node and add pin. And for that B slot, a little // and then ammo and clip. Let's get that first. It looks like, oh, I think it's going to automatically convert. Awesome. Then ammo and inventory in the C input pin. And then hopefully it will let me plug that into status. Sweet, we did it. And that's looking good. All right, that's done. Close those and go back to our widget blueprints. And we're working on WBP weapon. In the design panel, let's switch over to the designer if you're in the event graph up here. And make both of these text objects into variables. So status and shortcut both are variables so that we can do stuff with them in the event graph. First thing we're going to do is create a new custom event called update UI. So let's go here and just copy and paste that once again. Looks like, oh, that did not get everything. Probably because this output parameter isn't set. And I'm guessing that's supposed to be weapon update, so that should be BP weapon base. Anything that has weapon in the name, we know at this point is just of type BP weapon base. Without having to use our brains. Get weapon UI info. Get weapon. It's a function that's on the weapon base. Right? Yes, of course. Get weapon UI info. And then weapon icon goes to texture because it's a type texture 2D. So set brush from texture node. That's just setting the UI to what we tell it. So the weapon icon is coming from... Actually, let's make sure that's coming from the right place. Status, shortcut. Because did we even turn our weapon icon into a variable? No. So we have to actually make sure that we do that. So switch back to the designer and select your weapon icon. Select is variable. So that we can use that as well. All three of those should be turned into variables. Back to the graph, delete this weapon icon. I'm sure it's going to give, oh, it didn't even give an error. Because we have the exact same name, I'm still going to drag in mine just to make sure that it's pointing to this one. Like that. Shortcut, status, I'm going to risk that being the right one. Connect it up like that, right? And that's just setting the text to this text, which is coming from our weapon. So the shortcut's going to be 1, 2, or 3, depending on what weapon we have, and the status is going to be whatever our ammo is. All right, now let's go to the interfaces section of our blueprint, and this is not the same interface section from the class settings that we did before, but in the My Blueprint panel, not the Details panel. Interfaces, and you can see this is where it added those interfaces that we added before. Let's make sure that we open the object list entry, right click on list item object set, implement events. Let's go to the inventory and look at it from here. I don't think copy and paste and cast nodes really works that well, so let's manually cast to BP weapon base. And all we're doing is setting the UI widget. Set UI widget from BP weapon base UI. Oh, not get, set. And get a reference to self. I'll just right click and find that. Link. And then finally we update the UI. Actually, I'm going to drag it out from here. Oh, it's the same one. All right, that's it. Let's go back to the designer. Change the default image to the wrench. I don't know why that matters, but well, I guess it is our default weapon. Is a pipe. Not even the wrench. And then size to 100 by 100. Compile, save, and let's test it out real quick. Right now. Oh, well, I guess theoretically our default would be, if you want to change the weapon that they spawn with, I'm going to make mine the wrench. So player assets, character base, and the first thing we acquire from acquire a new weapon will be, instead of a BP gun in the begin play, I will change it to a pipe. That feels more right. Okay, and let's pick up the grenade launcher and the gun, and it's not working. How to figure out why that's not working. Just starting by retracing our steps. The last thing we did was in the widget blueprint for the weapons. We are updating our UI here, but our UI is not updating. So one thing you can do is add a string. This is where we're trying to point to. So you could print string at the end of this to see if it's being called. I realized it was not being called, so this was never being called. And then I'm like, okay, well, we're trying to call that from here. And then I can see in the subtitle here, it says the target is BP weapon base. So if I double click that, it's calling this, which is doing nothing at all. So that's why nothing was happening. So instead of the target being BP weapon base, the target should be this one, which is on WBP weapons. So I right click and let's do this one instead. And that was just me making an oopsie. So make sure that you create this update UI node. It's coming from call function. It's coming from the target is WBP weapons. So don't make it from pulling out a BP weapon base or even pulling out of here. Just make it by right clicking. File save it. I'm sure that's the problem. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a new problem. Let's see. All right, no, I just picked up the grenade launcher and the gun, and it's showing the icons for the grenade launcher and the gun. Obviously, if you're making your game, you'll have much more fitting and beautiful looking icons. But functionally, it's working. And just a note, that's being called from this event on list item object. So every time we add a new weapon to our array list, ultimately comes as update UI. So you might have noticed the ammo was not being updated if you shoot. That's because we're only updating the UI when we pick up the weapon and nowhere else. So that, of course, we need to change. We only need that. We don't really need to worry about that on BP range weapon. And then on the event graph, let's go to the event graph and find the event update UI that we made before. And we can get rid of this because a long time ago, we were just showing it as a debug string. But now we actually have the UI for it. So let's make it is valid node, the question mark. Pull, let's get a reference to the self by right clicking. Let's call update UI. No, we want it from the WBP weapon. That's the one we want. Won't make that mistake again. Let's get UI widget. Because it's on the parent class, we can find it. Plug that into here. And then pulling out from here to get the update UI node. Has to be from there. So the target has to be WBP weapons. Is valid connects. And self is the weapon update. Now please, let's hope that works. It updated. So I shot once and it went to 0 and I shoot my gun. Let me just test out an entire clip really quickly. See, automatically reloads. And yes, the ammo clip switches with the ammo inventory. I don't have a lot of ammo set. Perfect, it's working. Next up is the crosshair. So let's Go to the widget blueprints folder, WBP master. In the palette window, let's search for image. Let's drag it into the playing canvas in our hierarchy and make sure it looks like this. So it's a child of playing. So it only shows when we're playing, not when we're paused. I'm going to change the name to Crosshair. Might make it easier because we are definitely going to copy and paste some code later. So you want the exact names to match. And then let's anchor it. So anchors drop down in the details panel. Make sure the crosshair image is selected. And let's align, position, and anchor it to the middle. So Control Shift and hit the middle button. Check size to content, appearance, brush. Open up those drop downs. Change the image drop down to T Crosshair 128. And that's it. Let's compile and save. Now let's go to the graph. So top right into the graph. And here we're going to go here. So this is page 19 in the middle. Looks like this. Let's copy and paste this. This is just changing it to visible if we have a weapon selected. And then it's a kind of a creative way. It looks like we're just checking if we have a crosshair. So remember when we set the crosshairs for our weapons? For the pipe, we didn't set one. So it's using the isValid node to check if it exists or not. If it exists, then we're going to set the brush texture to that crosshair. If not, sets the visibility to hidden. Otherwise, it's visible. So that's in the event graph of the WBP master. I have some problems because it never sets it to BP weapon base by default. But even when I do that, I still have problems. So let's pull out of here and just recreate it. Got my weapon crosshair. Put that into the isValid node. I put it here. Yes, awesome. Delete this broken one. File again. Delete this crosshair. Oh, we need to go make that crosshair image selected. Make it is variable in the details panel. As always. And now we can see it here and drag it in. Use it for that. And just copy and paste it. Use it for all of the textures. And for the last set, visibility for the target. All right, now let's open up BP character FPS. So in our player assets folder, BP character FPS. Let's override the weapon switch hands down notify. So the very last one for me. Right click it, get a call to our parent function. So it does that stuff first, and then let's drag our UI, get a reference to that. So control drop, UI weapon switched. Connect that up. And the new active weapon, switch that to current active weapon. So it's calling this every time we reach this notify, which is when our hands are down and we're switching the weapon. It is deciding whether or not to show the crosshair or not. All right, let's go back to WBP weapons, and we're going to add a couple of new vector 2D variables. So variables, one of them is going to be deselected icon size. So we're just going to do some quality of life changes of type vector 2D. And plus another one, and it's going to be the selected icon size. Also a vector 2D. Then another one, deselected font. That's going to be of type font. And one more of selected font. So let's compile it so that we can change their default values. And these can be whatever you want. Right now, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to have deselected droid and selected as Roboto. And then the deselected icon size will be 100 by 100. Maybe you can make it really big for selected so we can see the difference. 150 by 150. Back to WBP weapons. And in the interfaces tab, right click on item selection changed. implement that event as well. Scroll down to page 20, top. Let's get all of this and see if that goes smoothly. Attach the white execution pin and the bool pin. And then let's just replace these variables with the ones that we made. So selected font at the top. Oh, what? Oh, these were supposed to be of type slate slot info. Whoops. That's okay. We can just change those two variable types to slate font info. And now there should be no problems attaching both of them. The selected font goes at the bottom. And really, you could do anything. Like if you wanted to show a different selected version of the image when it's selected, then you would just change these. Instead of set font to something else, it would just make a new brush texture. The same way we did, like up here, set brush from texture. But here we're just changing the font and the size. That works. Fingers crossed. Haven't done this in a very long time. It's working, but the font I chose, as you can see, doesn't have numbers in it. So just because other people might be having that problem, let's change that font to something else. I mean, it's just going to the variable and changing the font. Wait. I just changed them both to Roboto. You can now see the crosshair in the middle of the screen, and our bullet goes right to the crosshair. That's pretty cool if you ask me. Press 3, crosshair comes back. I'm a big fan. This feels a lot more like a video game now. Especially if you actually make the UI on theme with something and actually look good. But yeah, everything's functioning perfectly. Again, I just changed the font by selecting these variables and going to the default value dropdown. Now onto the health bar. So in my widgets folder, I'm going to create a new material and call it M for material _ health bar. Oops. And I'm going to open it up, select this main node. In the details panel, I'm going to set the material domain to UI, user interface, blend mode to translucent. And now I need to go to the documents to get what we're going to use for it, which are these two PNGs. I'm just going to pick one. I'm just going to drag that from my downloads folder into my project. Now with that in the project, I'm going to go back to the health bar material, right click, create a texture sample. You could also just copy and paste this from the documents. If you copy and paste it, you'll probably have to set this texture manually, which you could do in the details panel here. I'm going to click L to create a lerp node. Then I'm going to create a vector parameter node, which is the color parameter node. Name this one outline color. So that one is self-explanatory. You can change that to white. Just drag the grayscale bar up. That one is going into the B of the lerp. So the white output pin into the B input pin. Create a multiply node. That's going into the A of the lerp. Another vector parameter node. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. Change the color to green for the HP for this. Press F2 on it to change the name. That'll be like the HP color, so the life color. That one is going into the B node. And out of the A is coming linear gradient. That is going to look pretty cool. we'll go ahead and plug that lerp node into the final color. The red can go into the opacity, and the green can go into the alpha of the lerp node. It looks like this right now. Now that we kind of have a hang of how to make blueprints and materials, let's just speed this video along. So on the top of page 22, we're going to copy this little snippet here, and this is going to become the A pin of the multiply node. So let's delete that linear gradient and instead use this. And that's looking good. It should look something like this. So if it doesn't look like that, Jesus Christ. Make sure it matches this. You can pause the video. Moving forward, moving down. We're going to make it so that it turns red when the health is low. So let's just copy and paste this snippet as well. And place that, delete the life color. So we're deleting the B stuff that we had in the B input of the if of the multiply node and replacing it with that code snippet that we just pasted. So life critical color is this bottom value. And now we want to make the enemy health bar material. So if you want to make it different, you can, well, first of all, just select the health bar and Control D, duplicate it, rename it to enemy health bar. I'm gonna run and grab that that other PNG so that we could use something different for that. And come back here and place the other one. Control S, save. Open up the enemy health bar, replace the texture just so they can be distinct. And then for this one, we're going to replace the top part again. So everything going into the A input of the multiply. That doesn't really look right. I mean, you don't really have to do that, but I'm just going to do it. I mean, really, I want the enemy health bar to be like a long health bar. All right, now let's make the widget for it. So in our widget folder, widget blueprint folder, user interface widget blueprint of type user widget, name it WBP underscore health bar. Let's open it up and set the fill screen to desired. Make sure as always that we have a canvas panel. And we're going to go ahead and get an image. And in the details panel, we're going to set the size to content. And then the image we're going to set to M health bar. All right, let's anchor it at the center. Let's Control Shift anchor it at the center. And then set the size to 128 by 256. Okay. Let's go to the graph and let's just do this manually. Add custom event. Update health bar. Let's go back to the graph really quickly and make that image a variable, is variable. I'm renamed my image to health bar. I'm going to drag it out, get a reference to it, pull out, get dynamic material, connect it up to the beginning node, and then I'm going to set the scalar parameter of the return value. Set scalar parameter value. Update health bar needs an input. So in the details panel plus input, I'm going to make that health amount, which is ultimately going to equal our health, of course. And our health is of type float, decimal value. That's going to go into the value of the set scalar parameter. Parameter name, health amount. Compile that. Let's go to the WBP master and add the health bar here. So the palette, just like making your own variables, you can make your own health bar, your own palette thing. So we're going to add this to the playing canvas. Set the anchor to the bottom left. So Control Shift bottom left. It's anchored there now. Position to 10 on the X. That's the size. Position X to 10. Position Y to -10. And then let's click size to content. So now let's compile and save that real quick. Then go to the graph. Let's create another update health bar event. So another custom event called update health bar. This one also is going to take a float parameter of health amount. Oops. Of type float. And this one is just going to get, we need to go back and make that a variable, which I keep forgetting to do. So that WBP health bar that we just added in the details, check is variable. Drag it in, and then we can call update health bar from there. So whenever this calls update health bar, our health bar item is also specifically going to be calling it as well. So it's handy that we made the health bar as its own widget that we added to this master widget, because now we can call it from other places like enemies or destructibles and things like that too. All right, so I noticed it was kind of small before, so I went to the WB health bar, selected the health bar image, and unchecked size to content. So it looked better, and then I compiled it, and then it looked a lot better in the WBP master. So next we're going to make it so that it actually changes when we take damage. So let's go to player assets folder, BP character FPS. Let's open that up. And then I noticed we're going to want to override our health comp notify update UI. I don't have that. So you should have that. But for those who might be in the same situation as me, where they don't have that, that was what we made initially on our BPI health comp. So it's the interface, not the component. So BPI is the interface, BP health comp is just the regular component. So BPI _ health comp has these three things. Make sure you have them. If you don't, you can pause the video and just hit this plus button to add them. And then in the BP health comp, this is where we made them do things. So for example, right here, you could also go to lesson 12, lesson 11, and search for health comp notify. For example, request update UI is doing this. It's just calling that what we have up there, so I'll delete that. Request, no. Health comp notify update UI. Plug that into there, and then check death. Do I have that? My project is in such a weird spot where it has like concerning what it has and doesn't have. But then copy and paste that. Again, most of you guys, most of us already have this stuff. Comp notify dead. Just in case you don't, so you can stay along with the lesson. And then what about health comp notify took damage? We're calling that here. So let me just confirm that I have this as well. So event begin play, and of course I don't have it. I'll just delete all of this, and no, I'm not going to delete all of that. I'm just going to take everything after calculate damage and add this to the end here. And this is just health comp notify took damage. Make that in, and then this is connected to what is it? Get owner? Yes. Get owner. Target is actor. Request update UI, check death. Every time you take damage, you're doing that stuff. Yes, we went over that before. That's not what this lesson is going to be for. But one more thing we have to do is damage causer is connecting to damage causer here. Now with that, let's go to BP character base and actually implement that interface before we can do anything. BP character base, and this is the same thing that we did very early on in this video. But I'm having a brain fart. Class settings, interface. Oh no, it's over here now. And the BPI interface, health comp. Compile and save that. Now character FPS, fingers crossed that worked. Health comp notify. We're doing update UI now. So back to our lesson. Right now, all we're doing is calling what we just made. Yes. UI update health bar. And should look like that. One thing I forgot to do was turn the health bar into a material instance. So let's right click that in the widgets folder. Oh, at the very top. MI health bar. And let's make sure that our WBP health bar is using the MI and not the regular one. Also turn the enemy health bar into a material instance. MI enemy health. Let's double click them both and search for health amount. And check it and set it to 1 to start. And then let's do the same for the enemy health, for the enemy material instance. Health amount, set it to 1. Then let's save and test it. Before we can test it, the enemy, we set it to pull out a pipe at first. So let's make them pull out a gun. And I'm actually going to go to my gun and set the ammo and inventory to something like 50, honestly, so they never run out. Oh no, I don't have it so that he's attacking. So, oh my god, I have to. All I had to do was make so just in case somebody else doesn't have that, is right click character base, create child, and create the dummy, which I'm very positive that everybody has. And then in the dummy, in the event tick, call the attack. And then obviously replace the character base that you have in here with the dummy. So then I could go run in front of him and get attacked. I didn't do all that animation of taking damage and all that, but I can still see when he shoots me. If you look at the bottom left corner, the health bar is going down. So that's very cool. There you go. That's a health bar. So if you want to do the horizontal health bar, then you would just do what I showed before in the material graph. And if you are not taking very much damage, or you're taking like way too much damage, then you just have to edit the damage float, or the damage float variable in your weapon blueprints. Let's open BP dummy if you haven't already, and go to the viewports, and in the components panel add a widget. We're going to add the health bar on top of this dude. Keep it as widget. In the user interface section, to the enemy health bar, WB health bar. Scale, I'm going to make it like 0.4. All right, then let's go to the event graph. Let's drag that widget that we just added into the graph. Get user widget class, get user widget object, cast to WBP health bar. Connect that to the parent begin play. Get the health bar from there. And then set brush from material. Our material is going to be the enemy health bar. So we're actually setting it to the MI, not the material instance. See what that looks like. We can see it, but we can only see it from certain angles, only from the front. So that's not very helpful. Go back to our BP dummy event graph, and then this time let's go to the event tick and get our widget again. I just deleted the attacking node for now. From the widget, which I pulled from the components panel, I'm going to get world location. I'm going to get the player controller below that. Going in kind of a weird order here. Get the player controller, get actor, eyes, viewpoint, perfect. From the world location, I'm going to find look at rotation. Set the bottom target to the out location of the actor eyes node. And then I'm going to copy and paste the widget over here. Set world rotation. And connect that to the begin play node parent. And the return value. So first, let's override the event health comp notify update UI. So again, that's functions, override drop down, health comp notify update UI. Let's grab the widget. From there, let's get user widget object again, cast to WBP health bar. They don't play nice with copy and pasting, so that's why we are just redrawing it from scratch. Update health bar. Health bar is the target, and the health percentage is the amount here. It should look something like that. Feel free to pause if you need to. And then on when we die, so on health comp notify dead, let's get a call to the parent. So we do all of that stuff first, whatever the parent's doing. And then we want to set it to be invisible. So I just drag the widget out yet again, and then set the visibility to unchecked. Compile it. At the end of the event tick, I'm going to make him start attacking again. And then if we go test that, if I go shoot the enemy, I can see the health bar from all angles, which is awesome. And then I can shoot him, and his health bar goes down. So effectively, we have made an enemy. Blow him up does a little bit more damage, and when he dies, you guys should have the death functionality. I don't have it yet, but it disappears. I don't know if he did the death functionality, but whatever, it's not relevant to this lesson. But so far, we are looking good. I don't know how long this video has been going on, but I just know that it's too long. So I think this is a good stopping point. I damaged myself a little bit there. That's cool. And the rest, it's just the pause menu and the game over screen. So I'll do that in class or in another video or something, but that's going to be it for this one.